All right, so let me share my screen here, and thought we're going to try to take it up a notch. And we even have a prepared agenda, which
Oh my
uh,
goodness.
I know, right? So I think we've got someone that's kind of new that's been in Slack for a little bit. We've got Kevin Zhang. Kevin, you want to take a minute and introduce yourself and what you're working on?
Yeah, I'm Kevin, you know my name, and not the Kevin Hoffman, just the Kevin Zhang. So I'm in California, I'm in San Jose and Silicon Valley. I'm working on a project called the TEA. I'm not sure. I posted my introduction in our Slack channel a few days ago. The T stands for the trusted computation. Oh, sorry, trusted execution and attestation. It is kind of a layer 2 solution on top of the blockchain. I use the waSCC as a runtime. So the purpose is that the client can upload the data or code to IPFS. Then our algorithm can find one node to execute the WASM inside the waSCC runtime. And the whole process can be protected by the hardware. The hardware is typically a TPM, and it's a kind of small chip in each computer. And the TPM can give some kind of signature, or we call it the proof of trust, the POT part. The POT will send to the blockchain, the layer 1. The layer 1 can run some kind of, we call it consensus algorithm. The consensus will determine if a node is healthy or not. If a node is not healthy or is hacked or compromised in the blockchain level, all other nodes will disconnect this node. So to make sure that all the healthy node is running and unhealthy node is quarantined. So after that, the client can get the result from the node with a series of signatures on the POT. The client can verify the POT to make sure that the result is correct, and it is the result of the WASM he uploaded in the IPFS. So this is the basic idea of what it is doing. It's a long story. I try to make it short. I'm not sure I got it or not.
You're muted again, Liam.
No, it sounds good.
Yeah, the webpage is a little slow to load, but I think you've got a great explanation here for what all you're working on. Well, it's great to have you, and thank you for sharing what you're working on. Real quick, so I've been attending the WASM Time meetings. The notes are linked right here from the agenda, but just to link out some highlights. wasmNN is going to be merged in the next couple weeks, which is the Intel project that focuses around enabling some machine learning extensions. The team felt it's kind of precedent setting, so they're working on some RFCs for RFCs on how to submit and what the process is for inclusion. And that brought up a discussion around the greater release processes. With the team moving over to Fastly, there's going to be a merge of the WASM Time and Lucet binaries. And there's a lot of just definitions that need to happen around who handles releases, security reporting, responding, and things like that, that the team's going to try to set some policy on in the next few months. A decision was made around language bindings to pin the versions of language bindings to the WASM Time run version so that things don't get too different from, like being on a language binding for Go that's 3 and WASM Time that's in a 1x series. And while neither Mozilla nor Fastly are currently using the Rust crate, that's supposed to be the future pinpoint moving forward with the various ecosystem. Was there anything else out of the general community at large we wanted to mention? Ralph, you have anything on Crosslit or anything coming up?
So specifically on Crosslit, nothing particular coming up other than, evolutionary movement. One thing we do want to call out at the community level, we had a couple of weeks back a conversation in the networking community, public dev conversation, in which both we, Microsoft doing the Crosslit stuff on my team, and Pat on Fastly, we would discuss being able to create an experimental namespace for WASI APIs that isn't really on the path to acceptance. So all of us, we can't be the only ones. I'm sure everybody is doing various things, are busy experimenting, rebuilding various WASI potential API implementations and experiments to see how it feels. For example, we pulled in the BSD sockets PR, and to make that work, you have to rebuild the entire chain of tools. You have to rebuild Rust. You have to do a whole bunch of things to make that work. So, but on the one hand, we want people to try that out and be able to see how it feels. On the other hand, we don't want to give people the idea that somehow this is the thing that will be in WASI. And Fastly has a bunch of HTTP things, networking things that they do the same things with. And we all agreed publicly that we wanted to be able to offer these sort of usable chains to the world without having to think that somehow these are going to be in. And Dan and the other people in the community thought that this was a good thing to do. And it's also a good thing to make sure we have the messaging clear. The two actions that have not been implemented, one was to write a document describing the experimental namespace activity and making it very, very clear that this was not, any of these experiments were not intended to end up in the specification, that they were experiments for people to use. They may have more or less work involved in order to be able to use them, but that they existed, and we wanted to show that we were doing, that a lot of people were doing upstream work that might be useful to play with. So the second one was to actually offer that functionality, and that requires a little bit more work. So we could write a doc that says how to consume the Crustlet thing, but it's not really clear exactly how to prevent other people from actually having to rebuild the entire tool chain to use something. So that's the second bit of work. Pat Hickey on Fastly and we both were really excited about being able to start that. We haven't started yet.
Okay. Did you see, Chris, you got a Crustlet config out for Crit, didn't you? A Crit sender, so that you can, basically Crustlet up.
Yeah, and I have some documentation that I started on it. I can link that in.
Okay, Ralph, that may help. I'm not sure if you saw the the tweet that we put out for Critical Stack, but there is a super lightweight. Here it is, deploying Critical Stack and a bunch of other components into Kubernetes. So we have a simple quick start that we could maybe adapt for the Crustlet pieces, so that you guys could give people a ready to go turnkey version of this that's one line installer, so that you can start getting that feedback. Do you think that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think that kind of thing is what we want. We're proposing. I just captured the link. I did see the link. I didn't get a chance to go look at it. My last 2 weeks have been a sort of hellish landscape of internal work, so you'll have to forgive me. But oh, great, Kevin, fantastic. I'll re-up that outside the world so that people get a chance to see it.
Okay.
But the answer is yes. We like that. We like that stuff.
Chris, does it make sense for you to grab a little time with Ralph and maybe just give him a quick little demo or something like that?
Yeah, let's fork off and do that. Chris,
cool with that?
Yeah. When would you like to do
that? Just ping me, ralph.squillaci@megacorp.com, and the names are spelled on this little thing correctly, so you could just use that. And we'll find a time, and I just love to see it. Oh, the one other thing, everybody. One of the things I was chatting with Luke, Lynn, and Till about this sort of larger organizational thing and how they were getting up and running at Fastly and so forth. And one of the things that we all agreed on is that, or let them know about, is that for the next 2 months, essentially, we're going to be publishing a blog post on some technical aspect of the work that we're doing, and then upstream work in general, trying to point at everybody doing great things moving forward while we talk about some of our dorking around and so forth. So for example, you may have noticed that Butcher 2 or 3 weeks ago released a CGI implementation of WASI, because who can't live without CGI in our lives? And also, I think Radu just today or yesterday posted a thing about, I can't remember, linker, the JavaScript linker, based on the wasmTime linker.
Didn't you
These kinds of,
also do a TensorFlow a blog post just recently?
Yeah, did we? Or did somebody else do?
No, yeah.
Heck, I can't. Yeah. So, oh yeah, Radu. Oh yeah, that one. Yeah, I did remember that one, but I forgot it. You're right. So basically, what's going on is we're touching all these little points of technology and trying to release information about them. There is no implementation here that is a thing. It's all about, like, if we could do this, what would it look like, and what are the problems, and who else? Where did we get the inspiration? And so what we're trying to do is point to all the work doing and begin to do a drumbeat of conversation. So I told this to, and we're going to do that for another 2 months or so. We've got lots of things to talk about. Some of the high level things. So I'm going to do a blog post about sort of the whole ecosystem where it is now, as opposed to, say, a year ago or half a year ago even, or maybe even 3 months ago. Geez, things are moving. So, so I'll do that, and then other technical things. So at the meeting, I suggested that what we'll do is just post an open HackMD and actually drop in what our schedule of blog posts is. And for those who want to see what we're sort of working on as experiments, everybody can just join up and schedule themselves as a blog entry. So the original thought was, I just wanted everybody to see what we thought we were doing and when we thought we would release it, in terms of publicity about geeky things.
When are you going to publish that list, Ralph?
I haven't done it because of the last 2 weeks. So this was the other thing, as I proposed just making it open to everybody so that we could all just have a drumbeat going about our technical explorations. And then the real point is to draw in all of the inspirations and point off to other blogs and other people doing work that we consume when we did this, so we can make sure that everybody realizes that this is a huge collective engineering effort. Even experiments are those kinds of efforts. So I will do that. I have not yet done it. It would probably happen this week.
Okay, that's awesome. Anything else, Ralph?
And that's all. That's everything I got.
That's incredible. Well, we've got a bunch of stuff that we've had in flight for a while. Maybe we'll take a quick little pass through. Kevin, on the big core rewrite for .15.
Yeah, so I don't know who's been following it along or not, but we've basically rewritten the entire WASC code base from scratch with async in mind, and using actors, and essentially taking all of the lessons that we've learned from the past year or so of development and putting them into a new code base. And it's coming along pretty well. We just added, there's an open PR for Lattice RPC support. And then the next hurdle is the Lattice control plane. And then we'll be good to go on the new code base.
Okay, that's awesome, Kevin. I know it's been a ton of work, and then we've got a couple other follow-ups here we'll get through on the agenda in just a second on, like the docs and the new, demo script and all that kind of stuff. But Brooks, why don't we head to you with the OCI stuff that you've been working on?
Sure. So probably over the last week or so, I've been working on a crate that's embedded in Crustlet called OCI distribution. Previously, it had the functionality to pull OCI or artifacts from OCI compliant registries, and that was great. But we also desired the functionality with wash, the CLI that we're going to bundle with wasc, to be able to take provider archives and WASM modules and push them up to registries as well as pull them down. So I've been working on that PR up at the top there that Liam's got for the past week, and I just submitted it today. Build is failing just because of some CI, an outdated thing in the CI, but I'm pretty proud of it, and I'm starting to get that integrated into like a proof of concept in Wash as the PR comments are coming in. So that will be my first contribution to Crustlet, and that feels pretty good. Other than that, oh, go ahead, Liam.
Please. No, I was going to ask any questions, Ralph. You're eating. For one word, it sounds like swallow, follow, follow Ralph to off video. You bailed. All right. Well, you want to do a quick overview where you are with the new CLI, WASH, like bash, bash?
I can do a quick overview of where I'm at. Not too much.
I'm sorry, Liam. We're gonna have to boot you for that pronunciation. You're just gonna have to find a different Zoom.
It's not gonna be wash up. It's gonna be wash up.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we can argue about that later. All right. You want to talk about the new CLI, Brooks?
Yeah.
Curious, Grandma, if I didn't ask anybody to have anything prepared to share, so we can stick on the agenda, share in the future.
I don't have any new functionality to show with the CLI quite yet, because I just started working on the OCI stuff this morning, but it's in a really good place now. We've got like auto-generated keys for when you sign your WASM modules or when you create your provider archives, which greatly improves the initial developer experience of just wanting to create a project and then sign it so that you can run your actor or run your provider archive. So once we get the registry command into Wash, that'll make it easier for you to distribute your modules and provider archives. And it'll be easier for us to distribute our own first-party providers and modules so that people, when they run examples on their laptop, they don't have to download all the artifacts. They can just run it and we'll download it for them. Yeah, happy to answer any questions or talk more about Wash or the OCI PR.
It's a great update on Wash. Thank you, Brooks. Bill's not in today, but Bill's been working on packaging, Ralph and Kevin, for a couple things, Deb and RPM for x86 and Raspberry Pi. So we've got a few in flight there. And then down, once we get through those, we'll also go ahead and work on homebrew packages to make the installation of the new tooling, drop dead simple. And we've got a new package cloud repository spun up so that all the packages will be signed and distributed, from upstream in your package managers, and you'll be able to, do like, just app get update for updates and
Sure.
stuff like that.
Sure. Well, this is really super cool. Brooks, I love the PR. I have my headspace on is beginning to clear, so I'm going to be able to turn around and begin reviewing all the stuff that I've been missing the last 2 weeks. I think this is fantastic. Makes everything, especially infrastructure work, which most people don't think about, but it enables people to get the tools to try the stuff. And without that, we're really delaying the excitement until there's enough people who can build them to do it. So those kinds of steps are miracle workers, even though most people don't think about them because it's more enjoyable to build tools than it is to build infrastructure, typically. But there it is. So this is all fantastic.
Awesome.
I also didn't mention the fact that we have, I don't know if we blogged about it or we certainly will, but we now have the Crustlet working on ARM down to little teeny things, and have done a bunch of other experiments getting smaller and smaller. And so the actually pushing out edgewise is going, at least experimentally, is going much faster than it was. We don't really have them plugged into anything, so the ability is becoming available to getting smaller in terms of deployments and things like that. We have a WASM 3 running on extremely small devices. And but the experience on extremely small devices is sort of fundamentally different because you can only JIT. And so there's sort of different, what you might call runtime implications, like exactly how do you think about an app or app models in an environment where you're super constrained, but you can run the module. So those kinds of things are definitely there, and I love the progress that's being made, but we have nothing to really sort of show. But those would be in things like blog entries that we would come out with later.
Awesome. And then Chris, I didn't list, I didn't drop anything on the agenda for you. Was there stuff that you wanted to talk about? I know you've been like, grabbing a few things across the board here.
I don't think I had anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Super.
Doing a lot of KubeCon stuff this week, so.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then Phil is working on the new code generator to enable Go and assembly script in addition to Rust that we'll be relying on with WAPC. Kevin, I don't know if you want to facilitate any broader update beyond that, without Phil here, or.
I'm here, but he can talk to it. That's cool.
Oh, Phil,
I'm drinking coffee.
Oh, great. Well, hey, super. Sorry, I didn't see you hop on. Well, go ahead.
I mean, you pretty much covered it, right? Like this is the key to unlocking real seamless polyglot experience at the WAPC and actor level, right? So I'll let Kevin talk to like how he's incorporating that in his SDK, but for the most part, from a WASC standpoint, you don't even have to know that a code gen exists as the way I think Kevin's doing it, which I think is probably the best thing. And I think if you're writing a capability, that's where you get into the code gen. But again, it's a very simple set of commands, and WDL's pretty simple, and it's easy to articulate your interface and go to the races, kind of building out all the polyglot sides of the equation, right?
Okay.
I did say WDL.
Yeah, so the impact that has for WASC is, like Phil said, it's for the first party providers, you can just use little tiny crates that have the schemas and stuff that you need. So in the old code base, all of the actors used all of the other actors' data types, and so that was kind of inefficient, and it had update consequences. So now, if you're building an actor that uses an HTTP server, you just reference the HTTP server crate, which is generated underneath. And if you are creating your own capability provider, then you just write your schema, which is written in WDL, and then generate all the code for both the provider and the actor, and you're good to go. So now there's, we should have a lot more flexibility when it comes to creating all of these things, and less reason to do meaningless updates, which is what we were kind of saddled with on the old code base. By old code base, I mean what's out there right now.
Yeah, Ralph, Ralph and Kevin, Z, I'm not sure if you're still on or not. Yeah, we've got Matt Fisher, a whole bunch of folks that popped on now. Awesome. We've had a bunch of meetings with people, including some of the core team on, why do we need WAPC and where does it fit? And I think those conversations we had were very, very productive. As far as, the needs that we're trying to address and, how we're enabling other teams to make progress. And we look forward to continued feedback from, IBM and some of the other folks that are building on top of that over the next few months as we extend those, the tooling and everything else out there.
Yeah, I think this fits in with the general theme that I was evangelizing, which is that there are things we need to do now, right, to make things work. And they don't mean anything for the low-level upstream specification until they do, right? That doing things is not a bad thing, right? And the real question is that it's only a bad thing if the low-level specification, the core work that they're doing, doesn't complete the way it should. If it does, then these things now are in a situation where we can migrate to where we want to be on standards and things like that. But until it does, we have to have experiments that people can use.
Yeah, I agree. Matt Fisher, is there anything? I'm not sure if you saw the OCI stuff that Brooks was talking about earlier. Was there anything that you wanted to add from an update perspective? With the Crustlet or anything like that?
I not entirely have an update from our end. I did see the OCI distribution stuff, which is fantastic. I've already started taking a look and reviewing that code in particular. It's fantastic because we've actually been talking about how we could make that particular, like we were interested in making this or implementing this functionality at some point. It's just that we have been backlogged with other work. So this is fantastic, Brooks, for implementing this. In terms of an update from Crustlet's side of things, I think right now what the team has been focusing on has been trying to implement the rest of the kubelet API, as in fleshing out the kubelet crate that's inside of Crustlet. The idea there being that if we have all of the functionality available, like the container network interface, the container storage interface, any other APIs that the kubelet basically needs to handle and accept from Kubernetes, then we're in a very good position to start kind of building out a lot of the demonstrations. So right now, what we've been focused on is just kind of the lower level infrastructure, trying to reverse engineer the Kubernetes API in some ways. But once we have that, I think we can come back to the table and figure out how do we want to craft some of these demonstrations? How do we want to, for example, tie in the container networking interface into WASC and to the wasmTime and to other providers? And then also, how can we document that so that other people can write their own providers? I'm not sure if you saw on the Crustlet Kubernetes Slack, but there was someone who is also writing another provider for Crustlet, which is not based on Docker and not based on WebAssembly, as far as I'm aware. I think it's just running raw binaries that it's unpacking from a tarball and just running those raw binaries on the node. So very specific use case, but very interesting to see where this kind of technology is helping them out in some ways. So that's kind of where we're focused right now, is trying to re-implement the Kubernetes API so then we can handle those use cases, and then people with special Snowflake use cases can figure out how to go and do that, and then we can start crafting out the larger workflows that we're interested in, like the WASC providers and things like that, or the capability providers.
That sounds awesome. Maybe next week we can get a further update on that and just hear how that's going and what the blockers are. Yeah, for sure. So Taylor right now, he's implemented the larger underpinnings of the container storage interface. So for this week and probably for going on to the next week, I'm trying to implement that in the kubelet crate. So then we can actually take advantage of that inside of providers. Nothing actionable in terms of WASC right now. The only advantage that would allow WASC in terms of things would be we could take external volumes from Kubernetes, whatever storage drivers that they have, and then WASC will just see that as a volume mount, which we already have volume mount capabilities inside of the WASC runtime. So really, if there was a container storage driver that was available for Azure or for AWS or OpenStack or for whatever happens to be the interesting use case there, then WASC transparently gets that for free, which is quite nice there. That's awesome. That sounds super interesting. Well, real quick, let me just do an open call. Are there any pull requests or open issues that we'd want to review on the projects? It says that administrative note, Kevin, it looks like you've migrated the open issues to the waSCC project as you've broken it out into a daemon. Is that anything here that you want to dive in on real fast?
I haven't really migrated. I've created a couple of new issues that, just sort of as I was working in it. I still need to go through all the old issues and see which ones still apply and which ones don't. So I wouldn't consider this list here complete yet. I still have a lot of work to do in terms of putting in the rest of the roadmap.
Okay.
As it exists post ODOT 15.
Okay. All right. That sounds great. Now, I thought the next thing we could do is to pivot over to the target demo script for December the 7th, which is kind of an imaginary exercise. I did pull it out into a Google Doc, but the formatting is kind of janky. But I will get it shared with everybody that's on this list so that you guys can give us some feedback on that and come in. Now, I think we already have a couple feedback notes, but at a high level, Kevin, you maybe want to kind of walk us through here just the sort of like, what we're envisioning the new, December 7th, D-Day script is here.
Yeah, so the idea is to, this script essentially represents what we want the new first contact between a developer and WASC to look like. And so once you get the tools installed, which should now, or not now, but fairly soon, those will be easily installed through package managers and whatnot. We have a part or a function inside WASH called up, which basically turns WASC into a REPL. So you have an interactive session that you can use to manipulate your WebAssembly or your WASC host. And so inside there, what you can do is set bindings. You can start actors, stop actors, and it's kind of hard to see from the Zoom, but one of the huge things that's different is when you start an actor, you can either supply a file name or you can supply an OCI image reference, and it'll pull it straight out of a registry and run it without you ever having to build it locally. The same thing with capability providers. The new provider archive format means that we can pull a provider from an OCI registry and you'll get the version of that provider that's appropriate for your operating system and architecture. And because of the way that Lattice has been enhanced with the new rewrite, the script sort of shows that you can start an actor and you can start a provider and you can define the link between the two in any order, and the system just magically makes that work. And also part of this demo is we have a bunch of different people all connected or all running their REPLs locally on their laptops. And we'll hand out some credentials which will make it so that all of those developers that are running those locally will form a large lattice, similar to what we did for the game demo that we did on KubeCon Amsterdam. And so you have interactive commands that should feel very similar to kubectl type commands. So you can look at the list of hosts, the list of actors, the list of links, and so on. And the idea here is that getting introduced to what WASC does and what it can do for you and all of its benefits should be zero friction now. You don't need to build anything, you don't need to compile anything, you don't need to install any tooling other than just the one CLI, and you're good to go. And hopefully after getting a taste of what this feels like inside the REPL, you'll then go and explore further. And after that, the REPL then becomes an incredible debug tool for as you're building your own actors and providers on your workstation.
Super. And look, we'll get that script shared out with everyone. We'd really appreciate if you just drop into the Google Doc and just to add some comments here. I just need to come in and just fix the formatting on the cut and paste. Ralph, what's up?
So this looks fantastic. I love it. One thing that we discover, and this is a general ecosystem reuse of tool thing, which y'all be familiar with, but it's one of those things that you should surface up kind of consciously, as opposed to just engineers noticing it and complaining about it, which is de rigueur, as they say. With the things like the CRI implementation interface and so forth, we keep banging our heads against container native sort of experiences. OCI is a similar environment. We went through banging our heads against that with CNAB and Porter, the cloud native application bundle stuff. And we sort of helped, along with the community, OCI distribution modify to be able to use artifacts and things like this, so we can do more advanced use of OCI. That turns out to be really, really network effective. But as we go forward, we should kind of very consciously call out what it does provide, which is mainly network effect and ease of use, right? And also what it doesn't. Like, what are the feature set things that we really would like to do that are hard or not possible in OCI? Because those will help us decide, sort of whether this is great for, like, Crustlet helps connect WebAssembly to the Kubernetes community. But that doesn't mean that that's the only scenario for, a runtime, obviously. And so the same thing is true here. Using OCI connects us to the container community, Kubernetes, and so forth. But it's important to sort of sketch out where we can't do X and Y and for what reason, and the whole thing as a way of learning is going forward.
Yeah, that's a great point. One of the big things that switching to OCI bought us is that we were able to retire a huge pile of code that we were writing on our own. So we had built our own registry for WebAssembly modules called Gantry. And
right.
It was proprietary and it only held WebAssembly modules. But now that we have stuff working on OCI that's no longer theoretical, we've actually been able to do all these round trips. And we have our actors hosted in Azure Container Registry right now. Being able to leverage all that stuff that's a standard that other people already have these tools written for.
Exactly.
Is fantastic.
Right. So what I'm specifically saying is I had this, of course, in mind, right? There were things that you wanted to do in Gantry that were hard to do in OCI. But on the other hand, you removed a whole swath of your labor and you increased the footprint for potential locations to store this stuff.
Yep.
So that's super valuable, but I don't want to lose sight of the feature sets that in OCI dist we lose or are real hard. The reason for that is because I'm, of course, thinking about when we end up turning the crank on OCI dist again.
Yeah, well, that's I think, Ralph, to your greater point here, I think some blog posts just around the ecosystem is definitely in need. When I think about some of the common questions that we get, Kevin and I started sketching an FAQ, and this is sort of the realization around, like, let's get through .15 on the way to 1.0 here and do a rewrite. But we need, like, some architectural diagrams, some shorter explainers and stuff like that. Because to date, we've been, at least with our project, we've really been, having a collection of lessons learned that showed up as tools. And this is the first time when we are, when we're really trying to think through, like, what's the end-to-end experience. And Matt, you just shared this great blog post, Distributing with Distribution, Upcoming Changes to Helm Chart Repositories, sort of a meta commentary on our commentary, I assume.
Yeah, exactly. It touches largely on Helm because that's kind of like the subject area that we're obviously working in, and that was like the target audience that we were discussing with this. But that particular blog post does delve into some of the exact details that, like Kevin and Brooks, you probably are touching on and getting some advantageous ideas off of with OCI distribution. And so we have talked about this with Helm. We've talked about this with other ideas as well. But that kind of gets a lower level. If you're interested in like finding more content about this and trying to figure out like those discussions, either with other PMs or whatnot, hopefully that can help provide some context too.
All right, that's awesome. I'll link that in the meeting notes here. You know, I want to get wrapped up a little early because I want to get some feedback on the format today. You know, so next week, which is Thanksgiving, we'll still do a meeting on Wednesday. If people can make it, great. If not, that's okay too. I understand it's a week out. You know, we've got a couple demos with some groups that they're really trying to pull hard into this ecosystem that I don't want to talk about yet, but hopefully they'll be joining us in a couple weeks here. For future topic logs, we have also queued up just a review of the architectural decision log that Kevin's been working on, the docs rewrite, some naming around wasmCloud, the larger update on Crustlet Mat, how to code tutorials for the new tools, and maybe some overview on Crustlet with WASM 3 on small devices and the sort of experience and lessons learned there. Was there anything else that anyone wanted to add before we wound the meeting down this week? Any other future topics that we want to throw on the to-do list for the next couple weeks here?
Yeah, I did want to quickly jump on that quick little topic that also Ralph had mentioned with WASM 3 and all that, and with tiny devices.
Sure.
We've tested this before, and we had it like compiled for ARM devices, but it was like a very it's not the term ancient. I can't remember what exactly the word is, but basically it was a whole bunch of
politically we talk about legacy things.
I wouldn't say it's ancient. I'm saying the wrong word. I think it's more like it's archaic.
Excuse me.
A lot of black magic to try and build it. But basically we just automated the whole process. So we will have ARM64 architecture available for Crustlet. In regards to tiny devices, that's a lot harder because you have to flash firmware onto the devices, and then you have to have enough memory to actually both run a WebAssembly runtime to run a module as well as make requests to and from a Kubernetes API. So that's a little bit more challenging to find hardware that will be able to accommodate those situations and industries to actually use that that kind of hardware and to buy that. But that's kind of like where I'm at, where I'm experimenting and looking in research.
So the way I phrased it earlier in the conversation was just that we'd done a bunch of experiments and we can get there, but we had nothing that was built into anything. So that basically we were sort of dorking around trying to get it there.
Well, let's throw a pin in this because we've I know Chris, you've spent a bunch of time building Kubernetes and critical stack for ARM. So I think let's put a pin in this one for now. We'll make this just like a general topic that we can actually maybe put together a larger update on that. Anything else before we stop recording? All right. Thank you, everybody. See you next week.